March 12, 2015, 6:47 p.m., Pacific Coast Highway. Tom Hanks sees the car flip, sees the flames erupt, hears the explosion of the gas tank igniting. He's already dialing 911 when he hears it. A voice piercing through the roar of fire. "Help me, Forrest, please!" Someone is alive in there. Someone who just called him by his most famous character's name. Tom doesn't think. He runs, grabs a rock, smashes the window, reaches into flames that sear his hands and arms, pulls out a young woman whose face is covered in blood and ash. She's unconscious. The car explodes 40 seconds later. When Sarah Chen wakes up in the hospital, the first thing she sees is Tom Hanks sitting beside her bed. And the first thing she says will reveal a secret that connects them in a way that defies all logic, a secret that proves the power of movies goes far beyond entertainment. This isn't a story about Hollywood heroics or carefully choreographed stunts. This is about the moment Tom Hanks discovered that playing heroes on screen had prepared him to become one in real life. And more importantly, it's about the moment he learned that a character he played 20 years earlier had already saved the life of the woman he would save again. If you're ready to see how movies can literally change the course of someone's life, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. This story will remind you why the work we do, the art we create, matters more than we ever imagine. Let's dive into the day everything changed. Sarah Chen was born on November 3, 1991, in San Francisco, California, to parents who had immigrated from Taiwan in the 1980s. She was a healthy, active child who loved gymnastics and dreamed of competing in the Olympics someday. Her parents, David and Michelle Chen, owned a small restaurant in Chinatown, working long hours to give their only daughter every opportunity they never had. But on June 15, 2001, when Sarah was 9 years old, everything changed in an instant. She was riding her bicycle near their home when a drunk driver ran a red light and struck her at full speed. The impact threw Sarah 30 feet through the air. She landed on the pavement with devastating force. Sarah survived, but the damage was catastrophic. Her spine had been severely injured at the T12 vertebra, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors told David and Michelle that their daughter would never walk again. At 9 years old, Sarah's dreams of gymnastics, of running, of living a normal life, all of it was gone in a single moment of someone else's carelessness. The next 2 years were the darkest of Sarah's young life. She went through multiple surgeries, endless physical therapy sessions, and psychological counseling to help her cope with her new reality. But nothing helped. Sarah withdrew into herself, barely speaking, refusing to engage with therapists or even her parents. She would sit in her wheelchair staring out the window, watching other children run and play, feeling like her life had ended at age 9. She just gave up, Michelle Chen recalled in a later interview. She wouldn't eat properly. She wouldn't try in physical therapy. She would just sit there with this empty look in her eyes. We were losing her, not to her injuries, but to hopelessness. David and Michelle tried everything. They brought in specialists, psychologists, motivational speakers. Nothing reached their daughter. Sarah had decided that a life in a wheelchair wasn't worth living, and at 11 years old, she was slowly letting herself fade away. Then, in the fall of 2002, something unexpected happened. Sarah's physical therapist, a woman named Dr. Rebecca Martinez, decided to try a different approach. Instead of traditional therapy exercises, she asked Sarah what she'd like to do for fun. Sarah shrugged and said she didn't like anything anymore. So Dr. Martinez made a decision that seemed odd at the time, but would ultimately save Sarah's life. "If you won't do therapy, at least watch a movie with me," Dr. Martinez said, wheeling a television into Sarah's hospital room. "I'm going to show you something, and I want you to really pay attention. Deal?" Sarah didn't care enough to argue. She nodded listlessly. Dr. Martinez put on a DVD of Forrest Gump. Sarah had never seen it before. She sat there, expecting to be bored, expecting another well-meaning adult to try to teach her some lesson about overcoming obstacles. But as the movie began, something unexpected happened. She started paying attention. Forrest Gump, a character played by Tom Hanks, wasn't like other movie heroes. He had intellectual disabilities. He wore leg braces as a child. He faced bullying and discrimination. By all accounts, he shouldn't have succeeded at anything. But Forrest never gave up. He never let his limitations define him. He just kept moving forward, one step at a time, literally running through life, despite every obstacle. Sarah watched, transfixed, as young Forrest broke free from his leg braces and ran. She watched him run through childhood, run through college, run across the entire country. She watched him say, "I just felt like running," as if it was the simplest, most natural thing in the world. And something cracked open inside Sarah's closed-off heart. Because Forrest Gump proved that life wasn't about what you couldn't do. It was about what you could do, even when everyone said it was impossible. When the movie ended, Sarah looked at Dr. Martinez with tears streaming down her face and said, "Can I watch it again?" Over the next few weeks, Sarah watched Forrest Gump 17 times. She memorized every line. She studied every scene, and slowly, incrementally, she started to change. She began participating in physical therapy again, not because she believed she would walk, but because Forrest taught her that trying mattered more than succeeding. "Life is like a box of chocolates," Forrest said in the movie. "You never know what you're gonna get." Sarah decided that even from a wheelchair, she wanted to find out what she might get if she just kept trying. Sarah's progress was remarkable. She regained some limited sensation in her legs through intensive therapy. She learned adaptive techniques that gave her more independence. She started excelling in school, pushing herself academically since athletics were no longer an option. And through it all, whenever she felt like giving up, she would watch Forrest run and remember that limitations were just starting points, not endings. By age 16, Sarah had become a competitive wheelchair athlete. She raced in marathons adapted for wheelchair competitors. She won medals. She gave speeches at schools about overcoming adversity. And she always told people about Forrest Gump, about how a fictional character played by Tom Hanks had saved her life when she was 11 years old and ready to give up. But Sarah kept one thing secret, something she had never told anyone, not even her parents. She believed with absolute certainty that someday she would meet Tom Hanks in person and thank him. It wasn't just a hope or a wish. It was a conviction so strong that she planned for it. She carried a photo of herself at age 11 in her wheelchair, watching Forrest Gump on that first day with Dr. Martinez. She had a letter written, sealed in an envelope, explaining what his performance had meant to her. Sarah's parents thought it was a harmless fantasy. They encouraged it the way you encourage a child who believes in magic. But to Sarah, it wasn't fantasy. It was destiny. Tom Hanks had saved her life through a movie screen. Someday, somehow, she would get to tell him that face to face. In 2012, when Sarah was 21, something miraculous happened. Through continued aggressive physical therapy and experimental treatments, she regained enough function in her legs to walk with the assistance of braces and crutches. Doctors called it unprecedented. Sarah called it the Forrest Gump effect. She had simply refused to accept that running was impossible. By 2015, Sarah was 23 years old, living in Los Angeles, and working as a motivational speaker and adaptive sports coach. She had rebuilt her life from complete paralysis to independence. She lived alone, drove a car with adaptive controls, and was scheduled to compete in the LA Marathon's wheelchair division in 2 weeks. On March 12, 2015, Sarah was driving home from a speaking engagement at a high school in Malibu. She was on Pacific Coast Highway, that beautiful stretch of road where the mountains meet the ocean, thinking about the students she had just spoken to. She was thinking about how she had shown them a clip from Forrest Gump and told them her story. She was thinking about how, even after all these years, Tom Hanks still felt like a guardian angel she had never met. That's when the truck ran the red light and T-boned her car at 70 miles per hour. Sarah's vehicle spun, flipped, crashed through the guardrail and erupted in flames. Her adaptive controls jammed. Her door wouldn't open. And as fire engulfed the car and smoke filled her lungs, Sarah's oxygen-deprived brain fixated on one thought, one desperate hope. She screamed the only name that had ever made her feel safe when she was terrified. "Help me, Forrest! Somebody help me, Forrest!" And Tom Hanks, driving home from a charity dinner 3 cars behind Sarah's collision, heard her. Tom Hanks had attended a fundraising dinner for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, a charity that supports entertainment industry workers facing health crises and financial difficulties. It was the kind of event Tom tried to attend whenever possible, low-key, focused on substance rather than celebrity. doing actual good rather than just raising awareness. The dinner had run late, and Tom was driving himself home in his Mercedes, enjoying the peaceful drive along Pacific Coast Highway as the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. He was thinking about nothing in particular, just decompressing after a long day. When he heard the screech of tires and the sickening crunch of metal on metal, Tom's eyes snapped to the intersection in front of him just in time to see a pickup truck slam into a small sedan with devastating force. The sedan spun like a top, flipped twice, crashed through the highway guardrail, and came to rest on its side. And then, with a sound like thunder, flames erupted from the engine compartment. Tom's hands were already reaching for his phone to call 911 before his conscious mind fully processed what he had seen. Other drivers were stopping, pulling over, but everyone seemed frozen, staring at the burning wreckage but not approaching it. The pickup truck driver staggered out of his vehicle, clearly in shock but mobile, but the sedan's driver was trapped inside a growing inferno. Tom gave the 911 dispatcher the location, reported what he had seen, and was told emergency services were en route. 7 minutes away. 7 minutes was an eternity when a car was on fire. Tom knew that. Everyone watching knew that. But approaching a burning vehicle went against every survival instinct. Gasoline fires were unpredictable. The gas tank could explode at any moment. Everyone watching had seen enough movies to know what happened when you got too close to a burning car. Tom was about to become one of those frozen bystanders, telling himself that emergency services were coming, and there was nothing he could do. And then he heard it. A voice, female, young, screaming through the roar of flames. "Help me, Forrest! Please! Somebody help me, Forrest!" Tom's blood turned to ice. Someone in that car was alive. Someone was conscious and screaming. And that someone had just called him, or his most famous character, by name. Tom didn't make a conscious decision to run toward the fire. His body moved before his mind could raise objections. He later described it as pure instinct, the kind of instinct you develop when you've spent 30 years playing heroes on screen. When the script calls for you to run toward danger, you run toward danger. And in that moment, there was no difference between Tom Hanks the actor and Tom Hanks the man. He sprinted to the overturned sedan. The driver's side was crushed against the pavement, but the passenger side was accessible, tilted toward the sky. Flames were spreading from the engine compartment, and toxic black. Smoke poured from every opening. Tom could feel the heat from 6 feet away, the kind of heat that made his skin tighten and his eyes water. "I'm coming!" Tom shouted toward the car. "Hold on! I'm coming to get you!" The passenger window was intact, but the door was jammed. Tom looked around desperately for something to break the glass. A concrete landscaping rock, about the size of a softball, was lying near the guardrail. Tom grabbed it, ran back to the car, and slammed it against the passenger window with all his strength. The window cracked but didn't break. Tom hit it again, and again. On the 4th strike, the safety glass shattered into 1,000 pebbled pieces. Flames and smoke poured out of the opening, and Tom had to step back, gasping, as the heat intensified with the new source of oxygen. "I'm right here," Tom yelled into the smoke. "Can you hear me?" No response. The screaming had stopped. That was bad. That meant she was unconscious or worse. Tom knew he had seconds, not minutes. He pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around his right arm and hand, and reached into the burning vehicle. The heat was unimaginable. Even through the jacket, he could feel his skin beginning to burn. His eyes streamed tears from the smoke. His lungs screamed for clean air. His hand found something. Fabric, a shoulder, a person. Tom grabbed hold and pulled, but the woman was trapped by her seatbelt. With his left hand, now also wrapped in his shirt sleeve, Tom reached deeper into the car, found the seatbelt release, and pressed it. The belt released. Tom grabbed the woman with both hands and pulled with everything he had. She came free, dead weight, unconscious. Tom dragged her through the window opening, felt the flames lick at his hands and arms, felt his skin searing, but kept pulling. He got her upper body out, then her waist, then her legs, and as soon as she was clear of the vehicle, Tom lifted her in his arms like she weighed nothing and ran. Ran as far from the car as he could get in the 10 seconds he estimated he had before the gas tank exploded. Tom made it about 40 yards before his legs gave out and he collapsed on the highway shoulder, Sarah Chen's unconscious body in his arms. Other bystanders who had been frozen in shock suddenly rushed forward to help. Someone threw a blanket over Sarah. Someone else asked if Tom was okay. Tom looked down at his hands. The skin was red, blistered, burned. The pain was starting to hit him, sharp and intense. But he was alive. And the woman in his arms, her face covered in ash and blood, was breathing, shallow, ragged breaths. But breathing. "Forrest," she whispered, her eyes still closed. "Forrest saved me." And then, exactly as Tom had estimated, Sarah's car exploded. The gas tank went up with a roar that shook the ground. Flames shot 30 feet into the air. If Tom had been 30 seconds slower, if he had hesitated, if he had waited for emergency services, if he had let fear override action, Sarah Chen would have died in that inferno. But she didn't, because Tom Hanks had run toward danger instead of away from it. Emergency services arrived 4 minutes later. Paramedics took over Sarah's care, while EMTs examined Tom's burned hands and arms. Tom insisted he was fine, that they should focus on the woman he had pulled from the car. But the EMTs were firm. Tom had second-degree burns on both hands and forearms, and he needed to go to the hospital. Tom rode in a separate ambulance from Sarah, but he made the paramedics promise to tell him which hospital she was going to and what her condition was. He needed to know if she would be okay. He needed to know why she had called for Forrest. He needed to understand what had just happened. At the hospital, doctors treated Tom's burns, bandaged his hands and arms, and told him he was incredibly lucky. Another few seconds, and he would have sustained life-threatening injuries. Tom barely heard them. He was asking about Sarah, demanding to know her condition, refusing to leave until someone gave him answers. Sarah Chen had sustained a concussion, 3 broken ribs, a fractured left arm, severe smoke inhalation, and first-degree burns. But she was alive. She was stable. She was going to recover fully. And she had regained consciousness, asking for someone named Forrest. When the doctors finally allowed Tom into Sarah's hospital room, he found her lying in bed, bandaged and bruised, an oxygen mask on her face. Her eyes were closed, but she was awake. He could tell by the way her fingers gripped the bedsheet. Tom sat down in the chair beside her bed. His bandaged hands throbbed with pain, but he ignored it. He just sat there, watching this young woman breathe, grateful that she was breathing at all. After a few minutes, Sarah's eyes opened. She turned her head slowly, and when she saw Tom Hanks sitting beside her bed, her eyes widened in disbelief. "No," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. "No, this isn't real. I'm dead. I died in the fire." "You're not dead," Tom said gently. "You're very much alive. I'm Tom Hanks. I pulled you out of your car." Sarah stared at him, tears beginning to stream down her soot-stained face. "You," she said, her voice breaking. "It was really you. I thought I was imagining it. I thought my brain was making up a rescue because—" She stopped, crying too hard to continue. "Take your time," Tom said softly. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." But Sarah shook her head. "You don't understand. You've already saved me before, 13 years ago, and I've been waiting my whole life to thank you." Tom leaned forward, confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. We've never met before, have we?" "No," Sarah said, "but I know you. You're Forrest Gump. You saved my life when I was 11 years old." And then Sarah Chen told Tom Hanks a story that would change how he understood everything about his career, his purpose, and the real impact of the work he did. Sarah told Tom everything. About the drunk driver when she was 9, about the paralysis, about giving up and wanting to die at age 11, about Dr. Martinez showing her Forrest Gump, about watching it 17 times, about how Forrest's determination to run, to keep moving forward despite every obstacle, had given her a reason to try living again. "You didn't just play a character," Sarah said, her voice raw with emotion. "You gave me a reason to exist. When I was 11 and paralyzed and convinced my life was over, Forrest Gump showed me that limitations were just the beginning of the story, not the end. I started physical therapy again because Forrest never gave up. I learned to walk again because Forrest ran. I became an athlete because Forrest taught me that you don't need to be the fastest or the strongest, you just need to keep moving forward. Tom was crying now, too. In all his years of acting, all the awards and acclaim, he had never truly understood the impact his work might have on real people's lives. He knew audiences enjoyed his films. He knew critics respected his performances. But this was something else entirely. Sarah, Tom said carefully, what you accomplished, learning to walk again, becoming an athlete, rebuilding your life, that was all you. That was your strength, your determination. I just played a character. No, Sarah said firmly. You gave that character a soul. You made Forrest real. You made him someone I could believe in when I couldn't believe in anything else. Do you understand? You didn't just play a role. You created hope in a form that an 11-year-old girl could hold on to when she had nothing else. Sarah reached for her bag, which had been retrieved from her car wreckage and placed on the hospital room's side table. With trembling hands, she pulled out a smoke-stained, partially burned photograph and an envelope. I've carried these with me every day for 12 years, Sarah said. This is me at 11, watching Forrest Gump for the first time with Dr. Martinez. And this letter, she held up the sealed envelope. This is what I wrote to you when I was 16. I've been waiting for the right moment to give it to you. I never imagined the right moment would be after you literally pulled me from a burning car. Tom took the photo carefully with his bandaged hands. It showed a young girl in a wheelchair, painfully thin with hollow eyes. But those eyes were fixed on a television screen with something that looked like desperate hope. On the TV screen, barely visible, was Tom himself as Forrest Gump, running. Sarah, Tom whispered, looking at the image of this broken child. I had no idea. When we made that film, we hoped it would touch people. But I never imagined that it would save lives, Sarah finished. It did. It saved mine. Twice now. Once through a movie screen, and once on Pacific Coast Highway. Tom carefully opened the letter. The paper was worn, as if Sarah had carried it and touched it thousands of times over the years. The handwriting was teenage neat, careful, and filled with earnest emotion. Dear Mr. Hanks, my name is Sarah Chen. I am 16 years old. When I was 11, I was paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident. I decided I didn't want to live anymore because I believed life in a wheelchair wasn't worth living. Then my physical therapist showed me Forrest Gump. Your performance saved my life. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. Forrest taught me that the most important thing in life isn't what you can't do. It's what you do with what you have. Because of you, I started trying again. Because of Forrest, I learned to walk. Because of your art, I have a future I thought I'd lost forever. I'm writing this letter because I need you to know that your work matters. Not just as entertainment, but as medicine for people who are broken. You gave me hope in a form I could understand. You made me want to live. Someday I will meet you and thank you in person. I believe that with absolute certainty. Until then, please know that somewhere in San Francisco, there's a girl who is alive because you brought Forrest Gump to life. With eternal gratitude, Sarah Chen. Tom finished reading the letter with tears streaming down his face. He carefully folded it and handed it back to Sarah. For a long moment he couldn't speak. He just sat there, overwhelmed by the weight of what he had just learned. Sarah, he finally said, I have played so many characters. I've won awards, I've made films that were commercially successful, but I have never, not once in my entire career, understood the real power of what we do until right now. Mr. Hanks, Tom, please call me Tom. Tom, Sarah said, you've given me so much. You've given me life twice. There's something I need you to understand. She took a shaky breath. For 13 years, I've been living to meet you, to thank you, to tell you that you mattered. But now that you're here, I realize something. You didn't need me to tell you this. You were already living it. You ran into a burning car to save a stranger because that's who you are. You play heroes on screen because you understand what heroism really means. And you probably do things like this all the time that nobody ever hears about. Tom shook his head. Sarah, I'm not a hero. I'm an actor who got lucky enough to be in the right place to help someone. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Sarah said firmly. They wouldn't have. There were dozens of people watching. Only one person ran toward the fire. That was you. And it wasn't luck. You were prepared for that moment because you've spent your entire career studying what heroes do. You've embodied courage so many times on screen that when real life called for it, you knew exactly what to do. Over the next hour, Tom and Sarah talked. Not as celebrity and fan, but as two people whose lives had intersected in the most extraordinary way. Tom told her about making Forrest Gump, about how he had approached the character, about what he hoped the film would mean to audiences. Sarah told him about her journey from paralysis to becoming a wheelchair athlete, about her work as a motivational speaker, about how she used clips from his films in her presentations. "I speak at schools," Sarah explained. "I show them Forrest running and I tell them my story. I tell them that we all have our own leg braces, things that hold us back, things that make life harder. But those braces can break. We can run. We just have to believe it's possible and keep trying." Tom was struck by the circularity of it all. He had created a character that inspired Sarah. Sarah had used that inspiration to rebuild her life. And now Sarah was using that character to inspire others. The ripples extended far beyond anything Tom had imagined when he first read the Forrest Gump script decades ago. "How many people have you spoken to?" Tom asked. "Thousands," Sarah said. "Maybe tens of thousands if you count assemblies and conferences. I speak at schools, hospitals, rehabilitation centers, corporate events, anywhere people need to hear that limitations don't define you. And you show them Forrest. Every time. Your performance is the foundation of everything I teach. I can tell them words about perseverance and hope. But when I show them Forrest breaking free from those leg braces and running, that image does more than any speech ever could." Tom sat back, processing this. "Sarah, you've multiplied the impact of that film in ways I never could have done on my own. You've taken what we created and used it to help real people in real situations. That's extraordinary." "It's the least I could do," Sarah said. "You gave me my life back. Using your work to help others is how I honor that gift." Tom stayed at the hospital with Sarah until her parents arrived from San Francisco, frantic and terrified after receiving the call about their daughter's accident. When David and Michelle Chen walked into Sarah's hospital room and saw Tom Hanks sitting beside their daughter's bed, their confusion was immediate and total. Sarah introduced Tom and explained what had happened, both the car accident and the rescue. David and Michelle were overwhelmed, trying to thank Tom profusely, but Tom deflected, insisting that anyone would have done the same. Then Sarah told her parents something they had never known. She explained about the letter she had written at 16, about carrying Tom's photo and waiting to meet him, about believing with absolute certainty that their paths would cross someday. "You never told us," Michelle said, crying and laughing at the same time. "All these years you never said you were waiting to meet him. I didn't want you to think I was delusional," Sarah admitted. "But I knew. I just knew that somehow, someday, I would get to thank Mr. Hanks, Tom, in person. I never imagined it would be like this." Tom made a decision in that hospital room that would define the next chapter of his life. He would use his platform to amplify Sarah's message. He would help her reach more people, help more broken individuals find hope the way she had. Within a week of the accident, Tom had arranged for Sarah to speak at a major conference on disability rights and adaptive athletics. He personally introduced her, telling the story of how she had saved herself by refusing to give up. Inspired by a fictional character from a 20-year-old film, the video of Tom's introduction and Sarah's speech went viral. Within a month, Sarah had received hundreds of speaking invitations. Her story, and the story of how Tom Hanks's performance in Forrest Gump had literally saved her life, spread across media outlets worldwide. But Tom did more than just raise Sarah's profile. He started a foundation called Stories That Heal, dedicated to using film and storytelling as therapeutic tools in hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and mental health facilities. Sarah became the foundation's first ambassador and helped develop programs that used carefully selected films to help patients find hope, motivation, and healing. "We underestimate the power of stories," Tom said at the foundation's launch event. "We think of movies as entertainment, as escapism. But for some people at exactly the right moment in their lives, a story can be the difference between giving up and finding the strength to keep going. Sarah Chen taught me that. She taught me that the work we do as artists isn't just about box office numbers or awards. Sometimes it's literally about saving lives." Sarah continued her work as a motivational speaker and adaptive sports coach, but now with Tom's foundation supporting and amplifying her message. Together, they created programs in children's hospitals where young patients with life-altering injuries or illnesses could watch carefully curated films and then discuss with therapists how the stories related to their own journeys. The program was remarkably successful. Hospital administrators reported that patients who participated showed improved mood, increased participation in physical therapy, and better long-term outcomes. One program director said, "Sarah Chen proved that the right story at the right time can give someone a reason to keep fighting. What Tom and Sarah have created together allows us to replicate that moment of hope for hundreds of patients." Tom and Sarah remained close friends. Tom attended Sarah's speaking events whenever his schedule allowed. Sarah consulted on Tom's film projects, offering insights into how characters and stories might resonate with people facing real challenges. Their friendship became a model for how celebrity and advocacy could combine to create meaningful change. 5 years after the accident in 2020, Sarah competed in the Paralympic Games as a wheelchair sprinter. Tom was in the stands, cheering louder than anyone else as Sarah won a bronze medal in the 400-meter race. When Sarah crossed the finish line, she looked up at Tom in the stands and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Tom mouthed back, "No, thank you." Because Tom Hanks had learned something profound from Sarah Chen. He had learned that art matters not because of how many tickets it sells or how many awards it wins, but because of how it touches individual lives in moments of crisis. He had learned that playing heroes on screen wasn't just entertainment, it was creating templates for courage that real people could draw on when they needed it most. And he had learned that sometimes the universe creates perfect circles. He had played a character who inspired a girl to overcome paralysis. Years later, that same girl's determination to meet him had led to a moment where he could save her life in person. And through their connection, they had together created a way to extend that hope to thousands of others. The story of Tom Hanks and Sarah Chen reminds us of something we often forget in our entertainment-saturated world. Stories have power beyond entertainment. They shape how we understand ourselves and what we believe is possible. When Sarah Chen was 11 years old and paralyzed, she didn't need a therapist telling her she could recover. She needed to see someone, even a fictional someone, overcome seemingly impossible obstacles through sheer determination. Forrest Gump, as portrayed by Tom Hanks, provided that template. Sarah took that fictional example and made it real in her own life. This story also illustrates something crucial about heroism. Tom Hanks has played heroes in dozens of films: soldiers, captains, astronauts, survivors. But his real heroism on Pacific Coast Highway wasn't about special training or unique courage. It was about recognizing a moment where action was needed and refusing to be a bystander. Most people watching that burning car thought, someone should do something. Tom Hanks thought, I should do something. That's the difference between witnessing and acting. Perhaps most powerfully, this story shows us the circular nature of inspiration. Tom's performance inspired Sarah. Sarah's recovery and advocacy inspired thousands of others. Those thousands will go on to inspire more. The ripples from one actor's decision to fully embody a character in a 1994 film continue to spread, saving lives in ways that can never be fully measured. What can we learn from this? First, that the work we do matters more than we know. Tom Hanks didn't set out to save lives when he made Forrest Gump. He was trying to create an authentic, moving performance. But that performance became medicine for a broken child who needed to believe that running was possible. Whatever your work is, whether you're an artist, a teacher, a parent, or anything else, you never know whose life you might touch at exactly the right moment. Second, that we should never underestimate the power of stories. In an age where we often dismiss movies as mere entertainment or escapism, Sarah's story reminds us that stories are how humans make sense of the world. They're how we learn what's possible. They're how we find courage when we have none of our own. The right story at the right time can literally change the trajectory of someone's life. Third, that heroism is often about preparation, meeting opportunity. Tom Hanks ran toward that burning car because he had spent decades studying and embodying heroic action on screen. When the moment came, he knew what heroes do. They run toward danger, not away from it. His career had prepared him for that moment, even though he never expected to use those lessons in real life. Finally, this story reminds us that we're all connected in ways we don't realize. The drunk driver who paralyzed Sarah at 9 set in motion a chain of events that led to her watching Forrest Gump, which led to her recovery, which led to her being on Pacific Coast Highway that day, which led to Tom saving her life, which led to their foundation helping thousands of others. Every action, every choice, every moment creates ripples we can't predict. Sarah Chen is alive today because Tom Hanks played Forrest Gump with enough heart and authenticity to reach a broken child. And Sarah Chen has helped thousands of people find hope because she refused to let paralysis define her future. And Tom Hanks has dedicated a significant part of his life to amplifying stories that heal, because Sarah taught him that his work mattered in ways he never imagined. The next time you watch a movie or read a book or see a play, remember Sarah. Remember that somewhere, someone might be watching that same story at the exact moment they need it most. A moment when they're deciding whether to keep fighting or give up. A moment when they need proof that overcoming the impossible is actually possible. And remember Tom. Remember that when the moment came, when he heard someone screaming in a burning car, he didn't think about the danger or the risk. He thought about what needed to be done, and he did it. That's what heroes do, whether on screen or in real life. Sarah Chen carried a letter in her pocket for 12 years, waiting for the moment she could thank Tom Hanks for saving her life with a performance. She never expected that when that moment finally came, he would save her life again. This time by running into fire. But perhaps that's exactly how it was meant to happen. Because Tom Hanks learned from Sarah that his work mattered in ways he never understood, and that lesson changed how he approached his career, his philanthropy, and his life. "I thought I was just making movies," Tom said in a later interview. "I thought I was just playing characters, telling stories, entertaining people. Sarah taught me that we're doing so much more than that. We're creating hope. We're providing templates for courage. We're showing people that the impossible is possible. That's not just entertainment. That's sacred work." Sarah Chen still speaks to audiences around the world. She still shows clips from Forrest Gump. And she still tells the story of how Tom Hanks saved her life twice. Once through art, once through action. But now she adds a final lesson to every speech. "Tom Hanks didn't pull me from that burning car because he's a movie star. He did it because he's spent his entire career learning what heroism looks like. He's embodied courage so many times that when real life demanded courage, he knew exactly what to do. That's the power of stories. They don't just entertain us, they prepare us, they teach us, they transform us, and sometimes, at exactly the right moment, they save us." If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear that their life matters, that their struggles aren't the end of their story, and that the impossible is possible. Like and subscribe for more stories that prove art isn't just entertainment. It's medicine for the soul, hope for the broken, and sometimes, literally, life-saving. Leave a comment telling us about a movie, book, or story that changed your life. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Until next time, remember, we're all capable of heroism. We're all capable of saving lives, sometimes through the art we create, sometimes through the actions we take, and always through the compassion we show to those who need it most. Be someone's Forrest Gump. Be someone's hero. Run toward the fire when everyone else is running away, because that's when you discover who you really are.